She Overcomes inspires, equips, and raises up women to become their boldest selves, personally and professionally. Our mission is to empower existing leaders who live with courage and confidence in community. I'm Melanie Rudd, your host and founder of She Overcomes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I am actually so thrilled to have just like a quick conversation with you, Overcomer, the listener, that you continue to listen and invite me into your earbuds or however you're listening. But today, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about our Becoming Bold program. One of the things that when I started doing research on the imposter syndrome was realizing that a lot of people struggle with the automatic negative thought. Before I jump into that, here's what I want to tell you. When I started doing research on this stuff like years ago, I learned about this term called neuroplasticity. So here's what neuroplasticity means. Our brains think a certain way. And when there's like a path that we've created to have thoughts around, just like ourselves or work or whatever, it's almost like we've created these little roads in our brains, and we have these common thoughts. Now, when those thoughts are maybe broken or they're not working anymore, or maybe they're automatic negative thoughts, of course, that go down these paths that have been created, we actually need to create different pathways in our minds to change our mind. Because if you can change your mind, you can change your life. Your mind is really such a core part of your identity and the way that you think about yourself and the worldview and the way that you think about other people. And so I was recently teaching in a class and explaining to them that when we are breaking down the lies, we'll call them lies of our past, we're actually practicing this theory of neuroplasticity. It's kind of like in the Midwest. I was joking yesterday. We have two seasons. We have winter and construction, And so like when we think about neuroplasticity, think about it like this. Summertime. We have to break down the common paths that we take and reroute, right? So we need to take these detours because we need to go under construction to create new pathways for getting on Elm Street in North Fargo or University or whatever. And so that's what we're doing really in the cohorts that we're working on, is creating new pathways for the way in which we think and giving not only creating the pathways, but giving tools for how to do that. So when we change the pathways, when we go through construction, it takes a little bit of time. And what happens when you're driving? You have to slow down. You have to follow the signs. You have to be really cognizant of those around you because you're slowing way down because the roads are not as they should be, right? And it's the same thing in our brains. We need to slow down, reflect on the thoughts that have become actions, that have become habits, that have become our identity, and really think about, is this true about me? And so we're going to do a little tiny hack today on the automatic negative thought. So, a psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, they talk about automatic negative thoughts as the most common ones are always or never thoughts. So, I always do this. I'm so dumb. Or no one ever picks me. That's probably not true. The never always is often a thought. Or I should have done this. I could have done this. I would have done that differently had I known. When you ruminate on those should haves, that oftentimes they're connected to the automatic negative thought, or you dismiss the positive. So I had shared a while ago, I used to work at this nonprofit and we were participating in Giving Hearts Day. And, I had a personal goal of raising on Giving Hearts Day $175,000. Well, I didn't hit that mark, but what happened was we ended up raising, we won third place in all of the nonprofits. We won third place alongside the YMCA. And it wasn't 175. I think it was like 150 or something. And I was so mad. I was so mad. And I had the hardest time celebrating. And that's a crazy amount. We had so many people give. It was awesome. Like, I should have been celebrating, but I was so sad that I missed my own goal that it was hard for me to celebrate it. And I had to totally reframe my mind around that because I felt like a failure. And of course I wasn't. We got to help so many people. So many generous donors invested in our mission to change the lives internationally of people around us. And so I'm going to just read this really quick. An automatic negative thought can be that all or nothing way of thinking that is a typical example of a thought pattern that compels us to interpret distressing situations in unbalanced ways. The Joy Lab and Ulta Beauty did a study together, and of the 5,000 people that they surveyed, 67% said that ants are so much a part of their lives, they don't even notice that they're doing it. And so like a lot of common thoughts or those automatic negative thoughts I started to discover that I was having was things like, oh, I'm too much. I overwhelm people. Or ironically, I'm not enough. I'll never measure up. I'll never succeed the way that person has succeeded. I'll never be successful. I'll never be lovable. I am worth less than that person because I don't have X, Y, or Z. And these thoughts would just be constantly going in my mind. And what would happen, here's the thing with thoughts like this, is thoughts become, I wrote it all down. Thoughts become our words. Words become our actions. Actions become our habits or patterns, right? Like that road, the road we always take. It becomes the pattern of behavior. And what happens is when you create a habit or a pattern is that you now have created an identity. So I will never measure up. It becomes part of my identity. And then the behaviors that I do reaffirm this identity that I've created for myself. And so there's this, and this is all in the curriculum, you guys. This is just like 4 pages of the curriculum that we're going through right now. And there's this idea of the concept of first mention. The concept of first mention is many times we believe something about ourselves based on the first time that we heard it. And so it becomes part of our identity. And so if you remember a memory, so I share in our cohorts and in our groups, I have this memory of feeling worth less. Like I wouldn't say I was a 4-year-old and I'm like, oh, I'm worthless. I don't matter. Like that was definitely not it. But I remember recording an experience and thinking and feeling rejected or feeling kind of in a sense abandoned. They left without me. And I wouldn't at 4 have said, oh, I am worth less than my sisters, but I recorded it. And so kids are really bad. Kids are great recorders, but they're really bad interpreters of information. So for me, I recorded this memory, and it's my memory. What actually happened could have been different. I actually probably should talk to my family members, but like I recorded a memory, and with that memory, I interpreted it as I was less valuable as my sisters. I was less valuable. And then I started associating all the reasons why I thought I was less valuable than them. And it wasn't true. But the problem was I didn't know that. I didn't realize that at 4, I had created a pathway in my brain that said, I am worth less. I am not as valuable because. And so then throughout the course of my formative years in my life, I would record other memories then that would affirm this lie. What I didn't know was that manifested in ways in my personal life, in my professional life, in my social life. And so when something happened with a friend and they were maybe taking a break or we were pausing our friendship, I don't know how else to say this, I would be like, of course they don't want to be my friend. I don't matter. I am worth less. If I was that way, they would like me more. And so I would assign value to myself based on someone else's response to me. Or in a relationship, in a personal relationship with someone, if, a boyfriend, husband, in my case, I was married at the time. If he did something that hurt me very deeply, I would, in my brain, I would never say to him, oh, it's because I'm worthless. I would just believe if I was worth more, he would have done that. Or in business, I didn't advocate for myself. I was a terrible negotiator because I was allowing my bosses or the people that were negotiating my contracts, I was allowing them to tell me my worth instead of recognizing actually I bring value to the table here. And so then I would get less than what I wanted or I would never confidently negotiate because I was so scared and insecure. And so then when I didn't get what I wanted or thought I needed, when I didn't get what I wanted or what I needed, I would in my mind be like, well, that's probably how much I'm worth. And it was such a self-defeating way of living that I realized 10 years ago, I started actually learning from a therapist about the automatic negative thought. And then I read a book by Charles Duhigg, and it's The Power of Habit. And it all started to come together for me that the thought was leading to words that would come out of my mouth in ways that I would carry myself. Then it would become the actions, the habits, and the patterns. And what happened 10 years ago was I made a big mess of my life and was stuck. And I felt like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And I don't know how to get out of this, and I need help. So what I want to tell you today is if you're part of that 67% that I belong in, I've been there, I've done it, I want to really encourage you to really slow down. Allow yourself a little bit of time to go through some metaphorical construction in your mind, right? Take a minute. Next time you mess up, next time you make a mistake, or, I was driving with my daughter. I was driving with my daughter, and she's learning. So she is not an expert driver. She has her permit, and she is learning life right now on the road. And she made a mistake because everybody does. And she said something that just made me want to cry. She said, I'll always do that. I don't do anything right. And I stopped her and was like, what are you talking about? Where did that come from? You don't do anything right because you made one mistake? And just for the record, she didn't make it's not like we had like a hit and run. She just didn't stop where she was supposed to, and something scared her. There was a bicyclist that she didn't see, and it scared her. And but her response is what got my attention, not the bicyclist, not the stop sign. It was, I can't do anything right. And I realized that I have felt the same way. And as I was talking to her, I'm like, where did that come from? We need to talk about that. That's not true about you. What's the truth? We need to replace that lie with the truth. And so what we did, and I got to tell you, I have used this with my children for years now, because it was such a great tool for me as an adult, as someone in my 30s at the time, learning about the lies I was believing versus what was true about myself. And so I'm going to encourage you. And again, this is like a little mini session. This is our like little mini coaching session. Is I want you to think about any of those automatic negative thoughts. So when something happens, when you get bad news, or maybe something happens at work and you're like, oh, I always do that, or I never do that, or I should have done that. When those words are coming out of your mouth, I want you to pause. I want you to sit metaphorically at that stop sign. And I want you to think about what lie, what's the words in your mind that are playing out. What's the rumination that you're thinking about? And I want you to write that down. And then below that, write down like, okay, what are the words that are coming out of my mouth? If it's, let's just say it's, for me, I am worth less, or I never do anything right. Well, that's not true. Like I'll lean into this worth less one. I would say I'm worth less. And then the words, I would never say to people, oh, I'm so worthless. But my words would be like, oh, I suck. I don't do anything right. Well, that obviously wasn't true, but that's what I was saying to myself. And then I would mess things up, or I would procrastinate. So my actions were procrastination. My actions were, I already messed this up anyway, so who cares? Like I kind of had a defeatist behavioral pattern The thing about feeling worth less is you think that what you say doesn't matter. If you don't matter, if you're worthless, then your words probably don't matter and your presence doesn't matter. And so I was a habitual, I'm sorrier. Oh, I'm so, so sorry. Oh, I'm sorry I did that. Oh, I'm sorry that I'm saying, sorry that I'm existing. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Those would be the words that I would say. And so these are just a couple examples. And so some of the things that some of my actions, thought, word, action, habit, identity. My thought was the worthless. My words, I suck, or I'm sorry, or don't be ridiculous, Melanie. That was my best positive affirmation. Don't be ridiculous. And then the habits were, if you don't think your voice matters, you don't speak up. You don't speak up for yourself. You don't speak up for others. You have a hard time self-advocating. And so actually my habit and pattern was silence. I didn't know how to self-advocate. And then when things happen, when I was wounded, when people hurt my feelings or something, I wouldn't say anything. Instead, I would run away. I would avoid conflict because I didn't think I was worth fighting for anyway. And they're just going to leave anyway. Because why? Because I'm worth less. You can see how detrimental that is to relationships. And that has led to silent quitting at jobs. That has led to not advocating for myself at work. That has led to professional, really big problems. And so, which you can see listening to me. Now, I want you to think about yourself and what those are. Now, on the opposite side of that, I'd almost in this next week that you're thinking about this, I want you to think about what's true. So in my case, I am worthy. I am someone that brings value. My voice matters. What I have to say matters. And so the thought is, when I'm thinking like, oh, I suck, or I'm worthless, is no, I am worthy. I am valuable. And those words need to come out of our mouths. I am valuable. What I have to say matters. And if you're only saying it to yourself in the mirror, good job. Good job, because you need to say it. There is power in agreement. And there's a lot of psychological power, and it's called mirror work. Actually, Mel Robbins talks about this, about saying things to ourselves in the mirror. So say it to yourself in the mirror. No, I am worthy. I am valuable. And then your actions, here's what's going to happen is if you slow down and you realize like, oh, I'm silent out of fear. Now your opposite action is learning how to speak up for yourself. And you can use I statements. You can say, I felt that when we had this conversation, it felt like you were steamrolling me because this is how I experienced that. It's going to cause you to have to start learning how to engage in conflict. Doesn't mean you have to be aggressive. Doesn't mean you have to be mean. But speaking up is uncomfortable sometimes when you've lost your voice, and you've got to do it shaky. You do it ugly, you do it messy, you do it shaky, but you do it. Because then once you do it ugly a couple times, now it's going to become a habit where you can say, that felt hurtful to me, and I would like to pause this conversation until we can take a moment to just do some self-reflection. Like now you're going to start stepping into these things because now you've practiced it. It's scripted almost, where you can say, that felt hurtful. I'd like to take a pause so I can self-reflect and come back to this conversation when we're both ready to take responsibility for what we need to. So it doesn't have to sound angry. It doesn't have to sound like a beating drum and an angry woman or angry man, that stereotype. That's not it. That's not this at all. And then finally, this now becomes part of your identity and the way in which you relate to the world. And so now it becomes that you now, for me, I'm not worthless. Actually, I can step into hard conversations because I matter. My voice matters. I can say something. And if you don't agree with me, that's okay, because I know my worth. I know my value. I've been talking to myself about it and recreating new pathways for months, And so it's a learned behavior. Self-confidence can be learned and taught and practiced. Self-worth can't. Self-worth is very different. And those are those I am statements. And so, you guys, we're done. I want you, and like I said, this is just like 6 pages out of the She Overcomes cohort learning. If you like what you're hearing, if you want to be a part of what we're doing, I really want to encourage you to apply, to join us for our next cohort, which is starting very soon. Go to the website, sheovercomes.co, sheovercomes.co. Check us out. It doesn't cost anything to apply for the program, but if any of this resonates with you, I really want to encourage you to practice these truths, learn about the truth about yourself. And if you want a safe, authentic place to do that, I really am inviting you to join me. So thank you so much for being a part of today and for getting this little hack on the Becoming Bold Leaders program. Remember, you are stronger than you think you are. Make sure that you like and share and subscribe to all the socials. We couldn't do this without you. Bye.